My guest today is Johnny Sirpilla, who is a founder of Encourage LLC. He is also an entrepreneur, passionate leader, and a committed family man. In today's episode, Johnny and I talk about his international bestseller, Life is Hard, but It'll Be Okay. The power of hope, emerging through pain, and learning to live with gratitude. This book will help you reframe your life and realize that a stumbling block can be a stepping stone. Welcome to LIFEOLOGY.
Thank you, James. Thanks for having me.
I am really looking forward to this. We had a fantastic talk in the pre-call, so I can't wait to hear all the things that you're doing. But we did make a joke about this, that apparently today is a blue day. So
That's right.
Perfect minds are in sync. Now, you have done so many things that I've read about. You are huge in the RV world. You've experienced so many different things, and now you're an author, a public speaker. And so we're definitely, like I said, going to talk about your book. How did you make this transition from the RV world into this transformational space?
So, James, for me, my career was chosen for me. Actually, my dad chose my college degree as well. He said, Johnny, you're going to be an accounting major. And I said, okay, Pops. And off I went for undergraduate. I got to choose my graduate degree, though, in organizational behavioral management. But so I followed in the family's footsteps. And then after being in that industry for 30 years, I decided that at 50, I think I was old enough to decide what I really wanted to do. And I loved the industry that I was in. It helped keep families together and great recreation time. But I was really ready to follow my passions and helping people. And also, really looking for that, call it the second half of life. What impact was I going to make? And so I started my company, Encourage.
And I know you went through a lot of heartache, but as we said, at the intro there, that a stumbling block can definitely be a stepping stone. With all of the personal things that you've experienced, if you want to talk about, you may, but with all that, you found hope and you found purpose. What was it that happened in your life that helped you realize that through everything you've experienced, there is something on the other side?
So for us, our challenge was building a family. And as a full-blooded Italian, for me, the idea of family was everything, more important than business success. And so for us in that journey, it was a tough one. We had, after years of infertility, we had triplets, Nicholas, Mary, and Peter, and they passed away shortly after they were born. Then we went on for a number of other struggles through adoptions, failed international adoptions, failed domestic adoptions, and then scary pregnancies and life-threatening circumstances for my wife. And so for me, I think first and foremost, not having Nicholas, Mary, and Peter's life defined as a tragedy was really important to both of us. I could not live in the space that our children were a tragic ending and that we were scarred by that. I needed to repurpose those thoughts, and through cognitive behavioral therapy that our psychologist and a partner of mine today, Dr. Barb Fordyce, put us through, we really learned how to reframe our thoughts. And through that, I was able to see so many blessings that came from their short lives. And then I was on a mission to ensure that I felt it in the deepest core. It wasn't at the time, because we were in such a dark place after the funeral and all those things. It wasn't about trying to project that out to others. It was just about survival so that we could thrive rather than survive. And so it was just getting that in our own minds to say, no, that their lives don't have to be tragic. It can be a blessing. And there was so much beauty and grace in it, and the gift of God that we've got to be their parents and still remain their parents is something that is one of the greatest blessings of my life.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate your authenticity and your transparency. I'm sure many people can understand what you've experienced and having lost someone that they love as well, or know someone, of course, that they've lost. But in all that, though, like you said, you found your faith in God sustained you. Tell me more about that.
It's for us, it was never, God, why did you do this to me? Never thought that, not even for a second. We knew that, in free will, that God never promised us that this life is going to be easy. That's actually kind of where the Life is Hard title is coming from a bit. But, for us, we found God with us in that journey right there. In the time that Nicholas, Mary, and Peter were alive, it was one of the chapters is entitled Footprints in the Sand, because he literally carried us through that process. And we were the happiest people in that hospital, even while our babies were dying. And so there was grace there. And he showed us how clearly that he can be there. And then through the actions of others, James, the care and concern and the love that was expressed to us. And fortunately, we were in our 20s. We were young when this happened, that it showed us really how we needed to love others and how we needed to be there for others. Even when we had some of our closest friends, our 3 best friends were all pregnant. We all were due at the same time. And, their babies being born and living and thriving, we had so much joy for them. And God really gave us that grace to be there for them.
Yes. What's one of the things in psychology we talk about is called a dialectic. It's a fancy term that basically means 2 opposing things can exist at the same time. So you can be very happy for your friends, and you can also grieve 100% for your children as well, and also enjoy your children. So the whole aspect is of when we think, oh, it has to be one or the other, or I can't be happy for them because I'm hurting, etc. Thankfully, that was not what you did, but we can all realize that a dialectic is something we can live in. You can be heartbroken because your children are gone, but you can also thrive and be so excited that you had the opportunity to be their parent, you have these other opportunities. And so the dialectics are so important because it really allows for the complexity of our emotions and the understanding that it doesn't have to be one or the other. And it really honors everything we're experiencing in that moment.
I love when you say that it doesn't have to be one or the other, because as maybe a Catholic with Catholic guilt, I struggled early on when our first son was born. And, I say we have 3 children today that are 22, 24, and 26, and one of them's adopted. I don't remember which one because the biology became insignificant to us. But when our son Beau was born, and he is the adopted one, by the way, it is a conflict that I felt because I was so happy. And it just felt unnatural to be so happy and moving on. And I think we can all feel that, whether it's grief of a spouse that's died and you're moving on, or a divorce, or any loss that we have, and that we feel that battle. And I really felt that. My wife did not. She doesn't have the anxiety that I have and the active thinking mind that I have. She's got a grace and peace and calm about her that really sustained us. But it didn't have to be one or the other. And I really needed, through therapy, and that's why I'm so thankful for people like you who commit their lives to helping others, because I really needed to be given that permission. I needed to be told and expressed that point that you just made. So I love that message.
And well, thank you. And also the other aspect of moving on, everyone has a different connotation. In other words, a different idea of what that means. For some people, moving on, it can look in a way of they just forget the past and they just move on and they just do something new and sometimes they don't take the lessons they could have learned. Other times moving on is just in a different way. But the moving on can also be the aspect of the dialectic of I'm moving on in my life when it comes to new experiences, new people, new situations. And also I can still hold on to the beauty and the memory of someone or something that I experienced. And so with that, the moving on doesn't have to be a one or the other, just like the dialectic. It is using the memory and the grace and the beauty and the love of this, still have it be a part of your life and still honor it every day, and also experience these new things as well. So moving on, once again, doesn't have to be we leave the past and move forward. It just simply can be the way that you want it to be by using one of these dialectics.
That's right. And, I kind of looked at the opportunity for post-traumatic growth, right? We all know what PTSD is. We hear about that quite a bit, and it's real. But I didn't want to stay in PTSD because we felt that stress, right? I didn't want to stay there. So what I got encouraged by was the post-traumatic growth that could happen if we adopted these methodologies in thought, if we were open and we listened and we stayed faithful to God. I was encouraged by what can be ahead. I'm not saying that there weren't times when my wife and I couldn't get out of bed in the morning and we were spending way too much time at the cemetery. But I was encouraged that there has to be purpose for this pain. And then honoring Nicholas, Mary, and Peter by having them be transformative in our lives for good just felt like the only way that I could get through this.
So Johnny, we spoke a lot in the earlier aspect of this interview about the pain that you and your wife experienced, but the joy that came from it. But I wanted to transition right into your book. So tell us more about the book. Is this a memoir? Is this a self-help book? What kind of book is this specifically?
It's really both of those, James. It chronicles our lives through the age about 25 to 33. And it is an opportunity for us to use our story, which, truly, as I even wrote it and as others have read it, the feedback has been so phenomenal. But even people close to us really didn't realize all the intricacies and challenges that went on. And there were 13 different scenarios of children that came in and out of our lives before we ended up with the 3 that we raised. And so it's really using that story as the backdrop to the psychological principles of cognitive behavioral therapy and reframing thoughts to see life situations that happen to us in a different light. And so the book is really dedicated to anyone who finds life to be hard. And I think that is really all of us. Life is hard. And then also it is a message for those who provide strength and wisdom for the journey to help people. And so it kind of serves both sides, those who need the help and encouragement to those who can offer the help.
I'm really glad you worked with that psychologist, but with cognitive behavioral therapy. So for people who don't know what that is, it's a different methodology with multiple methodologies in psychology. But cognitive behavioral therapy focuses on your thoughts and how it affects your behaviors. There's a subset of that, which is called rationally emotive behavioral therapy, which is also great. Both are fantastic. Cognitive behavioral therapy is fantastic. The REBT, the rationally emotive behavioral therapy, what that does, it goes a little bit deeper and says your thoughts determine your feelings determine what you do. And so when you can interrupt your thought cycle, then all of a sudden it allows you to say, okay, well, if I think about this a little bit differently, just like you guys did, think about this differently, this changes my mood. Changing my mood then allows my body to then create different neurochemicals or just have a different response. And so if a person is struggling in general, if you can't change your thoughts, then you can focus on your mood. Well, if I don't like feeling angry, what kind of activity can I do so I don't feel angry? So if I do that activity, then all of a sudden it changes my mood, which then helps me focus on something else. Or if we're, for example, your behaviors in general, you don't like that. Let's say I'm arguing with someone. Well, if I don't want to argue, what if I just stop talking? So if I stop talking, that changes my mood, so I'm not angry, which then changes my thoughts. So any way that a person can recognize thoughts, emotions, behaviors, if you interrupt any of those, it gives you the opportunity to reframe something, to look at it how you want to look at it, as opposed to the way we've been conditioned to look at something.
Yeah, that's such a valuable tool to use. And when we were taught that, and when we were shown that there is another way out, we needed that. That was really the self-nourishment that we needed versus the self-medication, whether you use alcohol or drugs or food or other things to try to mask feelings. I have anxiety. I'm an anxious guy. I worry about everything. The things I worry about many times do happen. I always had a fear of losing a child. And that happened. And so, when we think about my active thinking, as I like to call it, before I was officially diagnosed with anxiety, inside my head, there's so many thoughts that are going on. You take that and you put that inside a marriage where I might be having those thoughts and my wife wasn't having those thoughts. And then I kind of cast those onto her. We worked hard to ensure that we grieved together, that we stayed close to each other through this challenge that lasted years. And when we thought we were at a low, we found that there was a new low that we didn't know existed that was around the corner. And that the idea of, thinking that life is going to have a challenge and then you just overcome that and you just keep going in the upward trajectory, that's ideal, but there's more hills and valleys in the process. And so, being in therapy helped us so much to grieve together and not grieve apart. The statistics of couples that divorce after child loss is staggering.
Yes.
And
yes, it is.
Even the statistic on couples with infertility, couples with financial stress, right? I mean, you can go through any life challenge when life is hard and see that things don't go in your favor. So we were very intentional about taking the steps from professionals like you that could help us to the other side.
If I may ask, obviously they're putting you on a spot here, but because so many couples do struggle with staying together as they grieve separately, there's a lot of emotions, so much there. What was it about all this that you were able to both agree, regardless, you don't have to go into the weeds about it, but what was it that you said how did you stay together? In other words, so for people who are listening, who may be struggling with that or may unfortunately experience that in the future, what was it about the two of you that says we are going to weather this together?
Our faith in God, number one. We were not alone in this marriage. There were three of us in this marriage. And so what we were experiencing together. And we were committed to each other. We were committed to God. And we never got stuck in the why me mentality. Matter of fact, there's a chapter in the book called Why Not Us? And we genuinely thought that at the time. People would say to us, oh, this has to be so hard. You're probably wondering why me. At the funeral, people would say that, or after. And the answer was always genuinely no, not at all. I mean, look at this world. There's awful things happening to people all over the world all the time. We have had many, many blessings. We have each other. We do have our careers. There's plenty of good things going on. This is our turn. This is our cross to carry. And so I think that did help us, James, that we went into therapy not having to get over the hurdle and spend time on why me, because it was more natural to think, why not me?
That's a really good point. It's interesting to reframe, because yes, when we do experience grief, it can also feel like it's not fair. And so there are 15 common thinking errors. So thinking errors are essentially the lens we use. I don't have my glasses here. So think of like glasses that we use that are skewed. And so if the prescription, just like yours, but if the prescription is too high, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I can't really see. So it's kind of like what those thinking errors do. And so thinking errors just like that lens. So if I think of something, and I use that thinking error, and all of a sudden how I look at the world is different. So one of those is heaven's reward fallacy. In other words, if I do this, then I'm going to be rewarded with something, or this is not fair. Life is not fair. So I did this for this person and it's not fair. So we take that, one of those thinking errors, or that thinking error itself, and we project that onto life. It's not fair. It's not fair. I don't deserve this. I've done everything I can. And so when we use that, then all of a sudden we do get caught in that loop, of why me? It's not fair. And once again, there's nothing wrong with feeling that, but if we get lost in that, then that's unfortunately the struggle that we'll have. That becomes a person's mentality or their lifestyle. So I'm sure even if you had it for a second, didn't have it for a second, that's totally fine. But the point is that when we experience grief, there's an appropriate time of grief. And once that appropriate time of grief is done, and it's different for every single person, it's important to say, now what? Another fancy term we have in psychology is called radical acceptance. We accept the facts as they are. We don't like what happened. We never want to go through it again, but these are the facts. I can choose to live in misery, or I can choose to say, this is inevitable, but what do I do with it? And so that's exactly what you all did as well, is you didn't use that thinking error. You use that form of radical acceptance, which I'm sure you didn't know that term, but it allows you to then say, what do we do with this? We choose to move forward in our life. And I'm so proud of you both that I say that on this side, because I didn't experience with you, but so proud of you that you are a testament of loss, and what do you do with the loss? And through the loss comes purpose, and through that purpose comes the way to edify and to give back to other people who may be struggling as well.
That's right. And when we went through that process, again, feeling all the emotion, expressing it, having good days, having bad days, and finding purpose, it really transcended into other areas of our lives. My business life, when I was running my company, several years after, I ended up selling my company to a much larger company, and then became president of that company. And we grew that to, a $4 billion enterprise. And I was blessed to be on that executive team, and we had over 10,000 employees. And I felt that I was qualified to lead people because I had an understanding of their struggles at home. I might not have known what their struggles were, but I knew from my own that they have them. And that when they come to work, I need to be responsible to create an environment for them where they are appreciated, valued, uplifted, so that when they go home, they can go home and be their best. Because if they are treated poorly at work, when they go home and exert the control or power that they have at home negatively towards wife, husband, children, parents, whoever it might be, some of that as a leader is on me if I'm fostering that in 10 hours a day in a work environment. And so it doesn't mean that I didn't hold people accountable. It doesn't mean that we didn't have clear financial goals and metrics to meet, and performance and customer service standards, all those things we had to do, but there's the right way to do it. And there was the right way to approach dialogue and conversation, even difficult ones. And I felt, James, more in touch with that because of what I had gone through. And I felt called to do better, because now I knew that true sorrow that so many other people knew before me.
And I think that really bespeaks to your leadership style or just who you are as a person, because yes, it's easy to create a culture in an organization where it's very dogmatic, it's very authoritarian. And in doing that, sure, everything is financially maybe secure, but the culture, if that is damaged, then yes, there's no empathy that's attached to that. And a culture in an organization is only as good as the empathy that each person can demonstrate for themselves. Because if like you said, you created that world and then the person displaces their anger and their feeling at home, then yes, then all of a sudden it creates this negative loop, which then all of a sudden causes the person not to want to come to work. And so that can affect their relationships at home as well. So to have this from the leadership down, to have this empathic, the servant leadership type of leadership style that you have, you can tell, I mean, that's why you guys were so successful in everything you did. And yes, just like we said at the very beginning, everything we experience, we get to decide what we do with it. Is it a stumbling block or is it a stepping stone? So I'm once again, so glad that you were able to choose the stepping stone side. Of course, you never want to go through it again. But in that, you found mercy, you found grace, you found joy, you found purpose.
That's right. We did. And strangely, I think, with our children now at 22, 24, and 26, all living in Chicago, I feel now qualified to be a parent. I feel like now that we've done it, I think I could really do a good job if I was given another opportunity.
That is hysterical. Well, Johnny Sirpilla, it has been such a pleasure having you on my show today. If my viewers and listeners want to find out more information about you, to purchase your book, to learn all the things about your website's fantastic, where will they find all this information online?
Well, the book is certainly available on Amazon. I'm very proud of #1 bestseller distinction in 3 countries in 19 categories, and the #1 hot new release in 23 categories. So very proud of that. Amazon, Barnes & Noble's, online. And then, of course, on my website, encourage33.com, you can find out more about me, or on Instagram at johnnysirpilla, or LinkedIn as well.
Wonderful. My viewers and listeners also know that if they can't find this information any other place, once again, the name of the book is Life is Hard, But I'll Be Okay. The Power of Hope Emerging Through Pain and Learning to Live with Gratitude. All that can be found in the show notes at jamesmiller@lifeology.com. Johnny Sirpilla, thank you so much for being a fantastic guest on my show today.
Thanks for having me, James. I appreciate you.